Hello there. This is Dr. Wilson, and I am providing the narration for this presentation. This is EDAD Theories of 5320 Theories of Systems Thinking, and this course is about bringing about change and innovation into a situation. So, what have you been doing lately? What do you think should be done? Have you been thinking about change, particularly in the school setting, but mostly it could be in any setting, in anyone's workplace? As you pay attention to things that are happening, what are the processes that need to be changed, or what are the things that you need to change? Should it be a part of the change, or does it really need innovation? So what's the difference between those two? There's a separate file linked for this Simon's video on Diffusion of Innovations. And go watch his. He's done lots of work on the diffusion of innovations and how quickly things diffuse and what should be done about that. So the final thing he said really is people do not buy what you do, but they do buy why you do it. So what does this have to do with educational leadership? Can you think about instances where people did not buy into the process or the change? I mean, really and truly, things tend to go around in circles oftentimes. But if someone can be innovative enough to draw people together to see their bright idea, then sometimes they can affect and cause change to happen. So you need to have leadership skills and visionary skills, and also be able to discern when something's wrong and how you can fix it. And so that's the change process, really. So you'd think that good ideas would sell themselves, but it takes a long time for things to come about and become change. So here are a couple of examples. The first email was sent in 1971, but for years, the internet was only used by institutions and researchers to share information. They kind of had hubs across the country where they even had stations set up where they could share information. And only in the 80s was the ability for universities to make email available to students. And really, it didn't take off until the internet in the mid-90s became a common thing. Also, did you hear about Jeff Bezos? Have you heard about Amazon? It started in 1993, but took 2 years before the site was up and running. And in 2000, people were still referring to it as an Amazon bomb, among other things. It took till about 2002 for things to really take off. And now, everybody's competing against Amazon, and Amazon seems to be winning the race. So there are 4 main elements that affect the diffusion of an innovation. First of all, the innovation itself. What problems does it seem to solve? What communication channels are used in the process of trying to get the word out about this innovation? How much time does it take other people to say, oh, what a great idea, and then have the skills to actually make it happen, and the time to accept that innovation into their lives or workplace. And finally, the social system for which the innovation is geared. If it is not ready for the innovation, then it will not happen. I remember knowing about a doctor who in the, 90s maybe, created a needle, an injection needle, which would retract after it was used. And he thought it was a brilliant idea. It would not allow people to share needles. It would keep needles from sticking even medical personnel as they were, using them. But he couldn't make the innovation take off because he was introducing it to the wrong social system. And so, and the doctors and medical communities had agreements with other companies. And so, they would have to really give up a lot of things to switch and purchase it. So even though it was a great idea, it didn't go off right away. That is an idea that is also seen, even in the third world countries. The idea of boiling water to kill germs took a long time to take off because women would walk down, gather the water, come back up, use it just like it was, and to introduce boiling water into that social system affected made all kinds of problems with the way they were doing life, and so it wasn't easily accepted. Innovation can be a new political philosophy. It can be a different way to make things happen. So perhaps, the move from sage on the stage to guide on the side is probably, if you pardon my French, an assembly line shift in education, because we've gone from the leader and the all-know-it teacher to having to have the students come up with the questions they have. The teacher just facilitates their ability to find answers and learn, solve problems. So it can also be a technological innovation. It includes some degree of benefit for the adopter. So perhaps the smartphone invention is part of that, an example of that. So that it does give benefits to people who are already using phones. The ability to also do internet and email and all of that kind of all these kinds of resources. And the technological innovation can create uncertainty about the unexpected consequences. So some of those unexpected consequences are now that there are smartphones in everybody's hands and pockets. Now we're trying to control the classroom with everyone with a smartphone, where they have all the answers and the distractions that it causes. So while some consumer innovations, such as the TV and smartphones, catch on quickly, other innovations like the metric system and seatbelts require decades to reach and to complete the use. So are we using the metric system in our everyday lives in the States? No. So it has never caught on in, I'm sure in business, where they're working with other companies in different countries, the metric system, they're having to use metric measure. But I remember hearing about a problem on the International Space Station where they used a wrong measure. So something was built using metric measure, or actually it was built using, standard measure. So in inches, in inches, and it should have been in the metric system using metric measures. And so when they got it up there, it didn't fit. Also, there was a discussion about how seatbelts, it took a long time for seatbelts to catch on. They were first as a added extra, then cars required them in, and so they built them with those installed, but not until they mandated the use by law did they even begin to diffuse. And so you can see how it takes a while for even good innovations to take place. Some of the things that affects the innovation and the rate of its adoption is the relative advantage. So, what is the perceived use? Does it improve people's economic advantage? Does it give them social prestige? Is there satisfaction or convenience? You think about the smartphone, and it seems to meet many of those things. So it maybe had relative advantage, which is why it diffused so quickly in that system. Does it have compatibility? Is it compatible with the system that we already had? Well, we had the internet separate from the flip phone, so putting those two together was compatible, and you didn't have to learn a lot to make that happen. So that also affects the complexity. Is it, if you had to learn how to use the internet and how to use the phone from scratch, that would be very complicated. But the fact that we knew how to use them separately meant that the complexity was low. Also, was there an opportunity for trialability? Do you remember Netscape and the AOL? I mean, I don't know if anybody even uses AOL now, but when it first came out, they gave sample, or really it's a way to load AOL on your computer so that you could play around with it and either purchase or not purchase, but a lot of free 45-day trials. And so they do that to promote or to give people a chance to try it before they buy it. Many people do use trialability as a way to push out innovations. And is it observable? So is there a way where people can see other people using this device or innovation, and they may decide they want to be able to do that too? Is there observable effectiveness that, okay, so let's say this one company has this and look at their sales. Well, then that's an observable effectiveness where they're seeing it pays to maybe have this innovation. So those are things that explain the rate of adoption, so affect the diffusion of the innovation. There are also a variety of ways that people have ways that they communicate back and forth with people, and so they can sell their products through these communication channels. And so there is a mass media, so that is most important at the knowledge stage. So once people, can they watch TV commercials and think, oh, I got to have that? This last round of, I guess, home innovations is, I can't think of her name or the device right now, but it's the little device in your home so you can tell it to do something, turn on your lights or turn off your lights. So that really was pushed out by mass media first. And then, maybe they would use interpersonal channels to push it out. So that is people seeing other people use the device in their homes and thinking, oh, that's cool, I got to have one. So their near peers began to help them see things. So they maybe saw a commercial, but then when they saw their near peers using this innovation, then they thought, oh, well, maybe I can do that as well. So that's called interpersonal channels. So what do you think is the most important communication channel that would affect your adoption of a new idea, of a new technical innovation, of a new educational innovation? Who would you listen to most, or would mass media affect you in your choices or your exploration? Also, what communication channels just don't work for you? Maybe you don't go along with the mass media. Maybe you kind of stand away from the crowd, and so if everyone's doing it, you're not going to do it. I don't know. Think about the communication channels and which ones work for you, and maybe which ones you should pay attention to as you're trying to push out this innovation. There are all kinds of adopter categories. So Simon Sinek talked about these in his presentation. There are the innovators, which are, I think I remember seeing, it is 3% of the population are actually innovators. That is pretty small if you think about it, because you've got to be willing to make $1 million or lose $1 million. Think about that. Or, step out and be known for this or not. This Tesla guy is probably one of those innovators who is the most obvious innovator of our generation. Bill Gates, Bezos, those are probably the biggest innovators that, but those are all selling products. So think about, is there an idealistic innovator that pushes ideals? Is there a political part? Maybe Donald Trump could be in this category of innovators for a political, idea. I don't know. Maybe that's pushing it. Then after the early adopter, after the innovators, there are early adopters. These are people who are more integrated into the social system. They are respected by their peers, and they are usually the next group that step out and say, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna try this. And so as they begin to participate in that, then they, their near peers begin to see. And so then there's an early majority group, which is that 33%, on either side of the midline, early majority, late majority. So it is one third of people who interact with peers but may not hold leadership positions is the early majority. So they generally are going with the crowd. And then the late majority are, well, okay, if you think about the smartphones, okay, it's hard to not have one because I feel like I'm being left out and I'm the last one to be able to, respond to this email. So I better get it, the smartphone. And so they are the ones who who are the late majority, and really they do it out of reluctancy. And then finally, there's these laggards, and they are the last to adopt. And really, they only do it because they're running out of choices. If you remember Simon, he was talking about, they are still holding on to flip phones and not moving to smartphones as long as they can. So they're suspicious of the change agent and the innovations themselves. Maybe that smartphone's going to be spying on me in my own home, and so, or allow someone else to spy on me. So if you think about that, sometimes they're paranoid people. What also affects the diffusion of an innovation is how much time you're giving it. So people need time to know about it. So there's the knowledge stage. So they see it, but they lack information. They need time to make a decision, and they don't want to be pushed into it. Also, there needs to be time for persuasion, where someone kind of has to sell you on it. And time for implementation. And if you rush any of these processes, then it might, even though it's a great innovation, it may not be diffused through your population or your business or your educational system. So you've got to give time for each of these systems. And maybe the most important is the giving time for implementation. Then there needs to be confirmation where a group of people decide this is right and we're going to keep using it. And so if you skip any of those steps, then again, your innovation may not diffuse. There are different types of innovation decisions. There's an optimal innovation decision where people are given the choice of whether to adopt or not. There's a collective innovation decision, so it's made by a group of people. So we are all in this district going to do this one thing, whatever it is, use this one skyward for, putting in your grades. So even if you don't agree, you're going to have to go along with that decision that someone's made for you. Or there's the authority innovation, where the choice to adopt or reject is made by a few and forced on all. So you can see here the seatbelt thing that I talked about earlier. In the 50s, seatbelts cost extra. But by 1980, someone in authority decided seatbelts save lives, and so we're going to require seatbelts. And so you can see that was an authority innovation. And, it probably was good for us that it was not left up to individuals to decide, although you have to really put them on or not. But seatbelts do save lives, and so someone made that decision that we're going to require seatbelts. So think about it. Can you think of a previous innovation that you were involved in? What were some of the key characteristics? How was the innovation communicated? include some examples of the adopters as well as non-adopters. And are there any innovative decisions? Well, if you can personalize this and think of your own example, it will help you later remember how to do things and have this lodged in your memory. So go through and think about an innovation and the characteristics of it and how it was diffused and how the innovation was communicated, and see if you can come up with your own. So if you can, in this course, you're going to need to come up with an innovation that you think needs to be made. And it could be a process for change. It could be an actual event, although actual technology or innovations are harder to push out. So probably it would be a process, or it could be a different way of doing things, or something that's come along that you want to have included on your campus, perhaps. So think about that, because towards the end of the class, you're going to have to, build a change proposal. And then think about, and write it down, because you may use that later. So think about, what did you learn that you liked? What are you wishing? And what do you wonder about? So what do you still have questions about? We're going to wrap this up, and you're going to put some notes in your, wherever you take notes, whether it's Evernote or a Spiral, or some other system. But then you're going to get on the discussion board and talk about change and where you've seen change and how change happened in yours. And if you use some of this vocabulary in your discussion posts, then yay, you will be doing everyone a favor. So think about these innovations. Think of your own examples. And I'll see you online on the board, okay?